Okay, what is going on? Clock's ticking. We are live. So I wanted to schedule this live event this evening just to talk about the Alteryx Foundational Micro-Credential. We've sped up the schedule just a little bit ahead of what I thought we were going to be. I thought we were going to hit this test like middle to end of the week. And sorry, I'm just turning down my phone, just making sure I'm actually visible and hearable, if that's a word. So we're doing the test today or tomorrow. I'll leave that option up to you. Here, I'm going to sit here and talk about the study guide for the test, and I've actually just taken the test myself. And so I'm not going to tell you what's on it. I won't tell you exactly like what questions, but I will highlight some things on the study guide. The study guide is very good. There's only one page on the study guide that talks about what to look over for the test, but it's precisely what you need to study for the test. So I will walk through that and we'll just go over some things from what we've studied, and we'll do that. So in other news, I left my jersey on today. I wore it for the game. I'm ashamed to admit, this is a Baker Mayfield jersey. I believed in the guy. I went out and bought the jersey. And that didn't work out well for us. Although it seems to be working out okay for Tampa, because I think he won today. So I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of tape on the back of this and make this the Browns now have a great defensive player who wears number 6. So I'm going to pretend this is a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah jersey. Okay, we all got our little things that we do. Okay, let's talk about this test. It is not a difficult test. I believe I've said this like 20 times in the last video. It is a test on general knowledge. It is a test over whether or not you understand the system and the platform. And it's a test over terminology and familiarity. So let me cover a couple of things off of the study guide. This is not going to be a long video. There we go. So you should be able to see the study guide, and breaks it down into 2 sections. Basic data analytics is about 1/3 of the test. Basics of Alteryx Designer is about 2/3 of the test. So it's 40 questions. You have an hour to do it. I knocked it out in about 10 minutes. Obviously, I've been using Alteryx for 2 years, so not everyone that takes this test is going to burn through it quite that quickly. I've also took the test when it first came out, so I was eligible for recertification. Just did that now. But it shouldn't take you an hour. You should not be pinched for time on this test. A couple of things that I recommend. First of all, have an hour blocked off to take the test. That's true of all of these tests. You should have some. I'm just checking my phone to make sure. I'm playing the unstable Wi-Fi games today as usual. So yeah, just making sure I'm visible on my phone. But have an hour blocked off for the test. Be focused on it. Don't have anything else open on your computer. Don't be checking email. Just good basic test taking procedures. The other thing, have Alteryx Designer open. It is not a cheat. This is an open book, open platform, open notes, open everything test, as are all Alteryx tests. We don't make you do the Salesforce thing where you have to pan around the room and show that you don't have a crib sheet taped to the ceiling or your desk, or you can't mumble to yourself because you're getting answers from somebody. I don't know, Salesforce, man. Weird. I took a Salesforce test once. I hope I never have to do that again. Anyway, not talking trash about Salesforce, but whatever. If you got a bunch of Salesforce certs, good for you. I failed the one test I took, and I was like, yep, never again. So there's none of that. It is a controlled testing environment, but you can have whatever you want open. I suggest having multiple monitors because you're going to want the test on one monitor and you're going to want Designer open on the other monitor. You may even want another tab with the community open because you can look up some answers there. Um, okay. There are a lot of questions on there where if you're stumped a little bit and you want to look something up, you can just pop open Designer and look. There are going to be questions about what pane do you find this thing on? Where, what can you find in the configuration? This tool, what can you find in the configuration for these two tools? Super easy to just pull it up and check. And that's fine. That doesn't feel like a cheat. Why? Because that's how life is. If your boss gives you a task to accomplish an Alteryx, you're not going to say, oh, I dare not open Designer. That would be cheating. I must have this memorized. No, hell no. You're immediately going to open it, even if you're 98% sure of the answer. You're going to open Designer and check. Or you're going to go to the community and check on the help site. So all of that, have Designer open. Trust me on this. Just have it open just in case. Okay, so let's go down the line. Basic data analytics, because there are some questions on there that are not Alteryx specific. Recognize and compare structured and unstructured data formats. Okay, what is structured and unstructured data? This is covered in the source material for the test. Structured data, you're talking databases, relational databases, non-relational databases like object-oriented. Those are structured. Unstructured data is stuff like pictures, video, sound files, blobs, and the like. So, spatial, I don't know, I suppose that would be unstructured as well, except for where it's, put into a database. But just know, what are they? Just generally be able to define them. What data of different types can be used for and recognize file extensions? Okay, so just talking about what file extensions have we talked about so far that we've learned? Excel workbooks, XLSX, comma separated values, CSVs, which are not Excel files. Just remember that. They're not Excel files. You generally use Excel to open them, but you can also use Alteryx to open them, and we do. All right, so different file types used for and recognize file extensions. Characteristics of quantitative versus qualitative data. Quantitative data is numbers. Number 6 is a qualitative number. Number 6 is not better than number 2, and it's not worse than number 19. There's no significance to the number as far as ordinality or one being greater than the other. They are the same. They are identifiers. So qualitative data describes a quality. So obviously string data, that's all qualitative, but numeric data, you can have qualitative numbers. My social security number, the zip code. A higher number is not better or more than a lower number. They're merely identifiers. And quantitative data is the Browns got 4 touchdowns today, or 3. Yeah, 3 touchdowns today. That's a quantitative number. 3 touchdowns is better than 0 touchdowns, which is how many the Cincinnati Bengals got today. Hence, the Browns won the game. All right. Define the types of data fields. All right, so data types, what are we talking about there with numerics, with strings, with booleans? That's pretty much the only ones. We haven't really dealt with dates too much so far, but you should know about date time. We don't do anything with spatial in this course, but yeah, just make sure you know those 4. Describe and compare the following data types: strings, integers, fixed decimal, floating point, Boolean, date times, and recognize the impact of data types on operations. I say it a million times, it's my little joke, you can't math with a string, all right? Just, if you have either a person's name or a qualitative number like an ID number, you can't, if it's the string data type, you can't math with it. But you can math with numerics, okay? Easy. What are Booleans used for? How many options do you have with a Boolean? It's a true or a false. It's a 1 or a 0. You've only got 2 different things that it can be. So that's super easy. And then the impact of data types on operations, essentially what I said. Can you math with a string? No, you cannot. You can math with numbers. Easy. The concept of metadata, its importance, and how it is used. Also, where to find metadata. We know that we find metadata in the results pane. You have that little toggle, that radio button that goes back from data to metadata. And it's annoying because you leave it on and you click onto another tool later and then you see, you're like, I'm still on metadata. All right. The concept of metadata, what is it? Data about data. It's a description of the data that you're seeing. What kind of information can you get from the metadata? And this is why I say have Designer open. Because when a question comes up about metadata, where can you find it? Just look at the Designer interface. When it asks what kind of information can you get there, click to metadata and look. It's not hard. All right. And then the last one for basic data analytics, identify and compare basic statistical measures, including their respective strengths and weaknesses for describing data. This is simple. Don't freak out about this. It's not asking you about R squared and the null hypothesis. These are not advanced statistical concepts. We're talking about measures of central tendency. What's a mean? What's a mode? What's a median? Easy statistical stuff. How do you calculate an average? What tools can calculate an average? What tools can find mean and mode and median? Where can you find those in the Designer interface? Easy stuff. Think to the things that we've learned. We've learned the configuration. We've learned the browse tool. We've learned the data prep tools. These are the things that they're asking about. All right, so that's the 1/3, and those are the things that it may be a little more difficult to actually go into Designer and find these, but it's going to be things that are in the interface. And then we get into the basics of Alteryx Designer. And this is 2/3 of the test. And now we're asking about specifics with the platform, with the tools, with what you can do with them. So, number 1, identify the Designer user interface elements and explain the function of each element. We're talking about the panes. We got 4 panes on the screen that are standard. We haven't got into any of the wacky ones that you don't generally see. There are ones called Interface Designer. There's one called Find Replace. We haven't dealt with any of that. Just the 4 panes that are on the screen when you pull up Alteryx Designer for the first time. So, tool palette, canvas, configuration, and results pane. What do? What information can you find there? What do you use them for? We pull tools off of the palette onto the canvas, just like the paint metaphor. We use the configuration to determine what the tool is going to do to the data. We use the results pane to see the results of the operations. What does the data look like flowing through the workflow? All right. So what do each of those do? What can we find there? And then smaller elements of the interface, like how do we save files? Where do we go to save files? Where do we go to find help? Where do we go to find resources? Well, you have the search bar. What can the search bar do? When you type something into the search bar, what's going to come up? And there we're leaning forward into number 2. Recall how to locate appropriate help resources within Alteryx Designer. So with that, absolutely. How do you use the search bar? What can you put in community? What's appropriate there? What can you find there? Navigating the components of a workflow. Specifically talking about tools, what can the tools do? Specifically talking about different elements of the workflow. So what do you have? You have tools. Tools are connected together with connectors. The connectors link the tools together through anchors. Okay, what do tools do? They modify data in some form. The input-output, they bring the data into the workflow and they output it to something else. The data preparation tools, what do they do? What is sort, sample, filter, the ones that we've learned so far, the limited palette? What do each of those things perform? What can they do? And not talking about minute details, just the basics. Where can you find an expression editor? What tools contain these common elements? You remember when I went through, I said, hey, this is going to be consistent. You can do 2 things with this. The expression editor is going to come up in what? Filter and formula. Easy. All right, so components of the workflow, the pieces, how do they link together? What do they each do? Manage Designer workflows, talking about saving them and sharing them, just the very basic things that we've learned so far. How do you save a workflow? When you save a workflow, what kind of file is it? What are the multiple ways to save a workflow? So when you When you save a workflow, you just go Control S, that's the hotkey. It's going to save it as a YXMD file. So that is the standard workflow. Well, what does that save? It saves the structure of it, the flow, but it doesn't save any dependencies. And then we covered how do we save with dependencies. Then we're going to make a workflow package, a YXZP file. Where do we go for that? We have to go into the options. All right. So remember those things. These are going to be stressed. How to get into and out of the workflow. How do you output a workflow? Number 5 is recognize designer-specific file types and when they should be used. Exactly. So we've already covered the workflow itself, the YXMD file. We've got the workflow package, YXZP for zip. And then what else have we covered so far? Well, we have the Alteryx database, YXDB. What is good about an Alteryx database? Best thing about an Alteryx database is it speaks Alteryx. So when you bring in a file, while Alteryx speaks CSV very well, Alteryx speaks XLSX very well, all of these, all of the major databases, all of these files translate into Alteryx very well, but we know our own. Alteryx speaks best to an Alteryx database, a YXDB file. So what are the pros and cons of that? Well, the YXDB file is the most fluid way to get data into and out of Alteryx. All right. Number 6, identify the following designer tools by their names or icons and associate each tool with its functionality. So you should be able to see a picture of it and then name the thing. What is this? If they put up a big thing of a green folder with a pair of binoculars on it, you know that that's the browse tool. So you are going to be asked to identify tools. Once again, perfectly acceptable to have designer open and to go check. That will reinforce your learning as well. Now, you should absolutely endeavor to answer every question sight unseen from memory. If you can do that, wonderful. But if not, go check it. So we're talking about browse, input, output, and text input. So the whole in-out palette that we've learned so far, those 4 tools, what do they do? What do they look like? What are their functions? And then getting into data prep. Cleansing, filter, formula, sample, select, and sort. So all of the blue blobs, most of them are very, very simple. Data cleansing, what can it do? Well, pull up a data cleansing tool and look at the little checkboxes. It's a very prescriptive tool. You know that it only gives you certain options to choose from. But what are those options? You don't have to memorize it, just pull it up and check it. Then getting into parse with text to columns. What are the requirements for a text to columns? What do you have to configure there? Summarize. We have not actually worked with summarize yet. It's in the next section. However, we have used summarize in, I believe, both weekly challenges that we've done. I don't think it was in the practice problems, but we've used it in weekly challenges. So you really just need to understand, what does summarize do? It summarizes, it mimics those auto-sum functions from Excel. So you can sum, you can average, you can count distinct, you can do string functions, lots of different things. Just know the basics of that. What can a comment tool do? What can a tool container tool do? The organizational tools, and then join and union. And date time we haven't gotten into, but date time is just gonna convert you from date to string and back again. You need to understand what Alteryx datetime format looks like, and we have covered that. And then demonstrate familiarity with unique aspects of the designer user interface. Seems to me like a bit of a catch-all. There's not really, that doesn't really ring any bells on aspects of the test. Okay. I'm just looking over my notes and seeing if I missed anything. How do we get tools onto the canvas? Various different ways. I highlighted, I think, all of them. I've highlighted at least 4. So you can drag it from the palette. You can right-click on the canvas. You can double-click from the palette, or you can get it out of the search bar. Yeah, I think that's it. So the study guide pretty much covers everything that's on the test. If you understand those things that I just talked about, you will be fine on this test. if you have paid attention and you've done all of the videos and the try it exercises and just all of the things in that getting started learning path up to now, we've done 3 segments. If you've done them all, you're going to be golden. All right. So and this goes over the interactive lesson defining data. Maybe review that one. If you're not all that savvy on data types, that'll go into data types, it'll go into file types. I want to say that one's like half an hour tops. But I didn't check that. I suppose I could check it now. Link a new tab. All right, we'll take a look. Okay, opening one tool examples, know where you can find those. Identify the designer user interface elements and explain the function of each element. Yep, covered that. View exam outline. Use your new skills to solve 1 to 2 weekly challenges. We're done with that. Start with beginner challenges, that's what we did. And it actually gives you some suggestions here. And just become comfortable working designer. Okay, so like I said, today or tomorrow, if you're following this program, I'd like for you to take a stab at this test. Let's see pages 7 and 8. Which weekly challenges do they suggest? All right, well, we can pick a couple of these weekly challenges to do, maybe we'll demo one tomorrow. Which ones did we do here? Did we do Eurovision? No, that one's a little more advanced. I don't think we did any of these. All right, so your homework today, tomorrow, your assignment is to complete this test. And then hit me up, either comments on YouTube or go find me over on LinkedIn. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, you're doing this challenge, just hit me up, send me a message, and we should connect. But yeah, come find me and let's do that. So, pushing forward. Today is Sunday. Tomorrow, Monday, there won't be a video. What I want you to do today and tomorrow is pass this test. Tuesday, I will either post a video or do another live session. I may spring for the paid version of StreamYard, so I can put this both on YouTube and LinkedIn. I thought about doing that today, but if you're with me on LinkedIn hard mode, that would have violated the rules of hard mode because I posted this morning, so I did my one post for today. I may do a live session Tuesday to talk about, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go straight into the general knowledge class. Let's look at this. That is, 36 minutes. Okay, so half an hour for defining data. I've gone through this before. I would say absolutely value added to highlight data types and sort of, the atmosphere around data, how data is organized. They'll talk about qualitative, quantitative, talk about structured, unstructured, common file types, data types. So a lot of the questions on the test covered right here. Recommend you do this video. In fact, I should probably add that. Make a note of this. Defining data. Okay, I'm going to add that to the curriculum. That will be tacked on to maybe just the study for this test. And yeah, we'll do that. So what is next? Tuesday, we will prep for the general knowledge test. Yep, there's your confirmation. See, 93.8. I didn't look anything up. And got in just under 10 minutes. Well done. As I pat myself on the back. Okay, let's go to, let me exit full screen here. Let's go to Learn, Academy, Certification. All right, general knowledge. Let's look at the prep guide for general knowledge. So I just want to make sure that I think we're ready for this one. I want to make sure. Because what I saw as the description was very similar to Foundational Micro. All right, 20 questions, 30 minutes max. This is even less rigorous, like volume-wise, than Foundational Micro. All right, all the boilerplate stuff. The tools, comment and tool container. All right. let's get into the test stuff, exam resources, help documentation. So it gets a little more in depth on what you can actually use, learning resources, getting started learning path. What does it say? Doesn't really say how much to cover in there, but okay. Use designer search and resources, navigate the user interface, identify Alteryx native file formats, share and export workflows, optimize workflows by reducing runtime, and collaborate using documentation tools. All right, let me take a closer look at this one, but I think we're ready to take this test. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll take that one, and we will reconfigure the schedule so that we can get all our tests in if someone needs a retake on this. I think we can do this. If you're feeling aggressive and confident, please just go ahead, take this one right after the Foundational Micro-Cert, because you can knock them both out in under an hour easily. But if I take this and I find that I think we need some review on something, then I'll come back and pump the brakes and we'll talk about it. But that is what's next. Look for that on Tuesday in some form or another. I'll take tomorrow to figure out how I want to attack that. But that is it for this week. Look at that. Landing the plane in under half an hour. Okay. Let me know what questions you have about the whole process, questions you have about the test. Either hit me up here or on LinkedIn. Let me know if you took the test and you passed it. Let me know if you took the test and you failed it. There's no shame. And I have failed many, many Alteryx tests. And even being a habitual Alteryx user, which sounds like a drug problem, no shame in failing an Alteryx test. They can be tough tests. This one is not tough maybe unless it's your first time doing it. So go ahead and give it a whirl. And I anticipate that you're going to be quite successful. All right, folks, with that is all I have for today. Just remember, follow me, and I'll make you a genuine Alteryx hero just like me.